Thank you guys for coming, and it's always great to participate in these kind of open participatory environments. And then I was going to make a joke about Commons, Commonwealth, sensing a common theme here. Obviously, we're all coming around this one vision of creating kind of a global commons. Yeah. And so this is going to be a little bit different of a talk. It's kind of more silly, an idea that I've kind of wanted to talk about for a little bit of time. I think it's been kind of a set of ideas that have been floating around the ecosystem for quite some time. And I guess to synthesize it all, I've kind of come around this idea of DAOs all the way down. So turtles all the way down, it's just a bunch of layers of abstraction like stacked on top of each other, originally like for physics or other disciplines there. And I guess a little bit about myself. So I'm from Commonwealth Labs, and so we're a team of 5. We're distributed all around the globe. We're also hiring. And one of the first products that we're building is called Edgeware. It's a Polkadot parachain, and we launched that with a lockdrop. And so I'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow. But we ended up kind of bonding about, let's say, 1 million ETH to help launch this new smart contract platform. And so we're really excited to kind of continue on that experiment. But this could potentially be built on Edgeware, but it's not strictly limited to that. But so just a little bit of background information that almost everyone here knows, or hopefully everyone here knows. So blockchains, one of the properties of these things is that they can kind of treat transactions big and small in the same way, right? So whether you're moving Bitcoin, you're moving millions and millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin or a microtransaction, they're treated the same, right? We can have like credit card quote unquote, like payments worth 50 cents that are treated the same way. And so this is kind of the same way with DAOs or any type of organizations that we kind of build. They can scale up all to a whole globe and community-wide participation, or they can just be a tiny kind of microcosm, something that can live for as briefly as a day, just to come around one specific cause. And so I think there's been a lot of previous experiments kind of talking about the former and not on the latter side. I feel like a bottoms-up approach is always something that is a little bit more less risky, and we've kind of seen how things have blown up in the past. I participated in the DAO. I was really excited about the kind of potential of that. Obviously, that was for a more strictly financial use case. But it's the same principles that we can, again, hopefully harness to support this commons. But on the smaller side, one of the things that is also something that's micro are cells, right? And so I think this comparison has definitely been made before. So different blockchains, they evolve, they have governance, different people contribute. They all take in information from the environment, and they kind of grow. They can fork, they can split, and sometimes they can merge as well. So there's a recent EIP to talk about merging a spec to merge Ethereum with ETH and ETH Classic, and to create one single blockchain. So there would be a merger and mergee chain. But again, that's an example of how mitochondria is now the powerhouse of the cell, but used to be something that was an independent organism. So why do I make that comparison? So basically, one thing that I kind of would like to see is evolution in, I guess, like in an empirical way to test these different governance / decision-making experiments. So, of course, another facet is, of course, like these. The comparison isn't perfect. So when you create an organization, you couldn't exactly like fork Amazon, right? Or you can't exactly fork Google or any of these other things. There's a little bit of secret sauce, whether it be in terms of like cultural elements, decision-making elements, capital, and it's tough to have, we'll call it like a Larry Page acting and making decisions on the same set, the two organizations that he might be a part of if this kind of organization forked away. And so we can't exactly test the decision-making mechanisms directly. And so, again, I call this turtles all the way down, DAOs all the way down, because there's a kind of bunch of a little bit of crazy ideas stacked on top of each other. So one way in which we can kind of test these DAO decision-making mechanisms is to create a bunch of these DAOs at the same time and kind of test them against one single objective function. An objective function that we can kind of like know and parameterize around is just the total kind of like returns from a specific DAO. So this specific case that I'm talking about is seeding 10,000 DAOs with $50 each, 0.5 or some amount of tokens each, and then having them kind of participate or invest in the DeFi ecosystem to kind of compete in earning a reward. So if you participated in, I don't know, something like Numerai or these other Quantopia or something like that, these kind of open trading experiments, this is kind of in the same vein. Except the one difference with these DAOs is that one person might be making decisions. They might vote yes to say like, hey, let's move our money into Compound, and their actions might take action in one or two of these DAOs, right? So one decision maker can have influence over, a few of these things. So again, I'm using emojis down here to talk about the evolution of all these different DAOs. So again, to kind of reiterate what I just mentioned, seed each DAO with X amount of Edgeware token. So I mentioned Edgeware token just because obviously that's the project that we're working on. And we have a treasury component where we're 10% of the chain's inflation in the first year will go to this DAO. And so this can be used to fund other ecosystem projects, block explorers, other things like that, or these types of experiments that we'd like to see on the chain. And so one of the questions that you might have, again, as I mentioned before, is the fact that if we're testing the decision-making experiments, so we can test like quorum rates, you can use like prediction markets or any of the components that Common Stack is building to see kind of which DAO actually ends up working the best. And so restricting only DeFi transactions, run against the same value function, and then this kind of gets a little more trippy. You can kind of evolve these DAO governance experiments with genetic algorithms. So if you kind of mix and match the different decision-making methods, I think that'd be kind of interesting. Stack them on top of each other, have these DAOs actually make decisions in other DAOs. And actually, if you want to totally go on-chain, you can actually have computed decisions like autoglyphs, so all the information actually can be computed on-chain. Or a recent result kind of from Microsoft is running like an ML thing on-chain. Obviously, that's kind of crazy, but so I make a little bit of joke here because if you see these 10,000 DAOs, who knows what will happen? It could be a really efficient capital allocation machine. If you tune it for another use case, it can be another kind of efficient commons creating machine. Hopefully you don't create Skynet, but it should have some kind of emergent possibilities. Thank you for listening to that little bit of a crazy talk. But I'm here to hear any ideas and questions. And this is just a little screenshot. So we're building an interface to help govern any type of chain. So here's Edgeware. And so this could be also the interface for the specific DAO. So these are the different proposals or discussions around a decision that could be made. You can signal, you can actually have an on-chain vote that happens there, all these other things. So happy to take any questions.
So any ideas how we need to protect from like Skynet scenario?
Yeah. Wow.
Can you say what a Skynet scenario is?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So Skynet, Terminator, so Arnold Schwarzenegger. I guess there's a new Terminator movie coming out. So Skynet. I don't even remember the actual genesis of Skynet, but Rise of the Machines. Yeah. So the machines took over, and we had to battle against time travel. Arnold Schwarzenegger, aka Terminator, came back, protect us all, and he's coming back again as well. So. How can we protect against that scenario in this use case? I mean, Well, this should be a limited run experiment, so just a small amount of capital, and then you should be able to, once it gets to a certain type of AUM or something like, call it $100 per DAO, you can start to fork that again and start it over with a new set of participants. So hopefully that can kind of mitigate that type of risk. But I think it'll come down to like who's actually participating in that type of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a little interested in the Edgeware token, and most people might not know it, but what I understood with the lock drop is that you guys need to return the capital. And so when you're seeding things with a token that needs to return capital, like I'm totally curious, like what's going to happen in that 6 months when you need to refund the capital, and how are you protecting yourselves in that way so that the investors get their locked capital back?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I guess the question. Well, I don't know if I need to repeat the question. So, what happens to the lock token? I guess within the interim period. So, I guess one thing I would say is I definitely wouldn't treat it hopefully as an investment. It's kind of an experiment in this kind of new commons that is a blockchain that is kind of being spun up. We're not using the quote unquote locked ETH for anything. It's just kind of sitting there. Yeah, I mean, once it kind of get, so I don't know. I guess I don't know how to really answer that question. Basically, it's just the Edgeware token will go live, and then people will be able to participate in that process, and the ETH will just sit there essentially. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Thank you guys.